Today I'm interviewing Angus Campbell, whose parents came over from Scotland to America as immigrants. I'm going to have him talk about what life was like before and after they came to America and what hardships they had faced. This interview will be a prime example of what a typical homesteader's life was like. For the most part, my questions for Angus will be specifically pertain to his family, but typically his answers are similar to that of most homesteaders. Angus, my first question is, what were some of the factors that made your family or other families leave their homeland of Scotland?
Well, as I recollect the stories I heard, it was pretty crowded in Scotland and not much for them to do. They used to have, everybody had sheep. They sheared their own sheep and spin the wool, and that was an industry there. And then they sold the yarn or cloth that they spun. Well, that was a home industry, but by the time my folks left Scotland, it was getting commercialized, so that wasn't really much future in Scotland for them. And there was a Scotchman that had come out earlier, and he went back to Scotland and recruited them. Well, I guess you would say that he promised them land and the milk of honey, plentiful of land. Well, when they got out here, the land was all proven up for. So my dad come out in 1909, I think it was, and the land was all proven up for. But he didn't stick with this Scotchman that went back there. He was a black sheep of the Scotch clan, and he worked for neighbors, and I don't know how long, but I'm saying 5 years, till he got he got some horses, and I don't know how much equipment he had, and he rented a 1/4 land. And then I don't know if him and my mother were betrothed in Scotland or not. I never found that out. But anyhow, he had to take the team and sleigh and meet her in Bossavane, and then they were married in Surs the next day, which was in, I think, 1909 or 1910. And that's, but I don't know if they were betrothed in Scotland or not, but I assume that they were. And they came out, and he had like I say, he had worked for another farmer for I don't know how many years, up to 5 years maybe, till he got some horses and some equipment and rented 1/4. And that fall, the Kinley farm came up for rent, and he let go of the 1/4 and got about 1,000 acres in the Kinley farm. And that was a big advancement and a big, it must have been a big step for him to take at that time. Well, he farmed that. Then and they had children, and I'm the youngest of 8, and the only one living at this time. But they lost a little girl 2 years before I was born, and I assumed it was from pneumonia or something like that in that time. And I don't know. I never found out if I was a replacement or an accident. But anyway, it went on from there, and he had rented this Kinley land, who was a school teacher and a farmer till he got enough money saved up. He went back to Illinois. He became a medical doctor. But that's when he rented it to my dad, and I think it was 1909. Well, I'm not farming anymore, but I kind of proud of the fact that my dad, my oldest brother, and I farmed that land for Kinleys, and I'd still be farming it, except I couldn't. I retired about some 10, 12 years ago, I guess. And I was renting it all the time, and my dad was, and my oldest brother. And when my oldest brother died, that's when I got the chance to rent it. And I don't know how many years it was that I rented it. But it's the third generation in the Kinleys in Illinois. They wanted to sell their share, 2/4 of it. And I wrote back to them or called them, and I said, well, that's entirely up to you folks. It's your land, and I understand it's selling at a good price at this time. We're not interested in that high price or not. We want you, or Darrell Stokes was he's a son I never had. And they had 2/4 they wanted to sell that way. So I talked it over with Darrell, and we each bought 1/4 of them 2 that they had for sale. So he's got something for his children to look forward to looking as inheritance. And I've got the other 1/4 that they wanted to sell. Well, I had rented some other land out there too from another party, 40 acres. And I still own that. And then my folks had, I don't know, they bought it, I guess, 1/4 land. And then my older siblings were going to high school, so they bought this place by Botno. And the west place was 10 miles from Sears. The oldest boy never went to high school. He was a farmer from get-go. And the second oldest boy went to Surrey High School for 1 year and worked for some friends, boarded and worked for his room and board. They were just a half mile out of Surrey. And he went to high school in Surrey the first year. Then they transferred to Botano and they moved down to Botano. And he bought this farm at Botano. It's a good location, but it's poor farmland. Not like what he left out in Hydesville Township. That's where I still live yet today, since 1927. So that brings us up to that part. You got another question?
Yep. Out of all the places in America, why did your family choose North Dakota and specifically Surrey?
Well, I guess it was this earlier Scotchman. I told you I went back to Scotland and recruited, and they took on his word, but they didn't stick with him. Dad didn't stick with him very long. As soon as he got out here and found out what the other Scotchman was, the black sheep I call him, he got on his own and worked for other neighbors till he got some equipment and rented this place, Kinley Place, and
And have you ever heard of like the Highlands and Lowlands of Scotland?
yes.
So where were your ancestors from, the Highlands and Lowlands?
They're
Or the Lowlands?
From the Heelands or Highlands
Okay.
of Scotland.
So did they speak English when they came here?
No, and my oldest brother and sister, no, the two oldest brothers couldn't speak English when they started grade school.
Oh really? So what did they speak?
Gaelic.
Gaelic? Okay.
But by the time I come along, they had forgot about the Gaelic, and they speak with, if they meet up in Surrey with her relatives, grandmother and great-grandmother, I suppose it'd be, wouldn't it?
Grandmother and great aunt.
Yeah. They'd speak Gaelic between them, but otherwise it was all English, you know.
Okay. Were there any hardships that your family faced as homesteaders?
Well, yes, they did have hardships, but they couldn't really be called homesteaders because the land was already proved up. They were renters right from the start.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
Yes, they had farming was not sure in them days either. They had different hardships. I didn't know this. I was pretty much a kid. I imagine I heard them talking about it. They were planning a trip back to Scotland in the 30s, and they never made it. And I know what the reason was. He was farming the West Farm in Hydesville Township, and we were living in Oak Valley. And in 1930, 33 maybe, I'm not positive what year, he got hailed out both places, completely wiped out, nothing harvested. Everything used to be cut with a team and with binder, and I remember him getting the twine all from Botano ready to go harvest, and then he had to haul it all back. course, I imagine he had a charge to get it, so they were lucky to get it back. But they never did get their trip to Scotland.
Could you tell me a little bit about growing up as in that time?
Well, I can remember being taken, 2 days of grade school, I could drive 3 horses on a one bottom plow. And had to help them get the crop in. And I thought, gee, I'm a man, I'm driving 3 horses and they knew more about plowing than I did. So there was hardships. Well, I guess they didn't affect me that hard personally, but the year that they got hailed out on both farms, and it killed little chickens and poult and turkeys that were mother had hatched out to, and I can remember picking them out of after the ground was covered with hailstones, and then when the storm went by, mother got busy and wrung the neck off, the head off the chicken and turkey poults so that they'd bleed out and save for eating.
Would you say coming to America was it for the better or for the worse?
Well, it was for their betterment. Scotland, there's not much. There's an industry, this shipbuilding industry down in London, but they came from the Isle of Lewis, which is the northern part of Scotland, and then it's about a 3-hour ferry to the Isle of Lewis is where they come from. And that was separate from Scotland with this 3-hour ferry it took me to cross it. I don't know how. One thing I don't know how they made it across the Atlantic, and I couldn't find out from anybody I asked. How did they make the trip across the Atlantic, or how long it took them? You know, in them days, I heard from possibly 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's bingo at 2 o'clock. I was just letting you know.
Oh, this is much more fun.
I bet it is. They're invited to play bingo too.
I don't think today.
Okay.
Thank you. What was that? No.
Getting across.
Yeah.
You'd asked and didn't know how they.
I never did find out how long that trip would be. I heard from 2 weeks to a month or more, and I never did. That's as close as I ever found out what the journey would take across the Atlantic. That'd be quite a while, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. And I was looking up the national dish, and it's haggis. Is that how you pronounce it?
That's a delicacy.
So, since you love, you were a sheep farmer, right?
Yep.
So, did you have haggis a lot?
Yes. I don't know just how to describe it. But a stomach, you'd save the stomach and wash it out good. And I don't suppose you ever seen the inside of a sheep. Have you at butchering?
No.
Well, you've been around when they butchered cattle, I suppose?
Yeah.
It's the same organs
to quit.
inside.
Low battery.
Okay.
I can do mine.
You can keep talking.
But,
No, Grandma, it's still going.
what we're going to, the
This-
haggis.
The stomach.
And Mother would take the stomach, turn it inside out, wash it real good, and stuff it with, I don't know what all she put in it. But she had two recipes. One had raisins in it, and the other didn't. And what was the main ingredients? I really can't. I really don't know what the main ingredients was. But anyway, we didn't have refrigerators in them days either. But we had a barrel sunk about halfway. You know, a barrel is about that high in the ground, and we'd carry water and put in there. That is cooling everything out. She'd keep the milk for daily use in there until we got the electricity and got deep freeze was the first thing she wanted when she got electricity. And it was quite an advancement when they got electricity. The best thing that ever happened to our farm, I think. You couldn't imagine. You always had electricity in your lifetime. You could turn on the switch and all this and that. Well, we had the house wired, and the deep freeze. Some of the neighbors had got a deep freeze run by kerosene, burned kerosene. She didn't really want that. I don't know why. But I come home one day with a 2-plate electric cooker, 2-plate,
Hot plates.
hot plate. What are you gonna do with that? Oh, I said, you're gonna make oatmeal in the morning and tea for yourself, and not gonna use it, won't use it. Well, we'll see. And plugged it in the wall, you know. We all had the deep freeze. That was the first thing she wanted. And how do you plug it in the wall and freeze it in the freezer, deep freeze, and cook it on the hot plate? I never could get her to understand that. Can you understand that? You know, it works. She finally, she said she wasn't going to use it, but she did. And, but I never could explain that to, I don't think she ever did realize how that worked.
Well, I think that wraps up my questions. Thank you for answering them, and that was really good.
Well, I hope it helps you in your report.
Oh, I'm sure it will. Thank you.
Well, now we